Welcome to Bunnyfish Crafts. I'm your host Heather, known as Bunnyfish on Ravelry, Plurk, Instagram, and YouTube. Today is the 7th of April, 2014, and this is episode 73, In the Bag. Grab some sticks and string and come sit with me. This week, I was frantic. I made myself frantic because the owners of the house that we're renting, they were in town and they wanted to stop by and check in on a few things. We have a pipe that's kind of leaking in the basement. So they wanted to come in and see and look around before they called other people in. And that is really, really stressful for me because I don't like people being in my house when I don't know them that well. And I've only met the owners of the house twice. The first time was when we came to look at the place, and the second time was when we signed the paperwork. So it was highly stressful for me. Plus, if you don't have small children, you probably don't know, but they make huge messes. And it's not like I need my house to be spotless, but I like it to look clean. And I'm just going to throw it out there. I'd rather knit than clean. So I only clean, there are 2 rooms in my house that I only clean like once a month because one is my boyfriend's study area. So he's a grown-up. He should clean up on his own, right? He should, but he doesn't. And the other is the library because mostly we go in there and read or just, the kids play quietly. So it's not really messy, but it's the little things that build up when you're not cleaning, like dust and vacuuming. So I did all that last week. The whole house got a spring clean, which is good. I got rid of a lot of clothes that we didn't need, set them aside. There's going to be a huge community yard sale that I may or may not take place, or that I may or may not take part in. It's going to happen, but if it's rainy, realistically, I'm not going to be a part of it. I'll just donate what we don't need. Yeah, so I stressed myself out for nothing. They were here for like 15 minutes. I wasn't here. I went to the library. I took the kids to the library, and Steve was here because I don't know why it stresses me out. It just does. I just don't like people being in my personal space without invitation. And since they were like, hey, we're going to stop by, I was like, I don't know. It's crazy. I'm crazy. Whatever. Last week, I forgot to talk about the knit along that I'm going to have starting, last week. So if you finished anything that fits into this category, feel free to post it in the finished objects thread. So what the knit along is charity knitting. Anything you want to knit. Really, anything that's going to somebody else will totally fit. And this is an easy knit along for people to fit into. I've had this planned since the end of February, but now everybody's doing charity knit-alongs. So if you're doing, I think it's hats for SSK, totally. If you're doing hats for ZK, which is what I'm going to be doing, awesome. I'm going to be talking about some charity squares in a moment. Anything that you're making to give away to somebody else, perfect. I know there are at least 3 podcasters who are doing charity knitting, so feel free to double dip as long as it's okay with them and their threads. So this will run from April 1st through June 15th. It's a long time to get in crafting. I will be making hats because there's going to be a hat drive at the Zombie Knit Apocalypse headed up by Java Jenny. So I'll be taking hats there. So if you don't know where to donate and you would like to make hats, you can always contact me and I will take them with me to donate. They're going to the Mayo Clinic, and those hats can be any size because Mayo helps people of all ages. The prizes will be, the winner can pick a pattern of $7, or I can make them something out of my stash over here. Boop. You guys, I organized my stash last week. I don't think I organized it before the podcast. I think I organized it after. And this shelf and this one right here, those are all of my nice stashed yarn stashed before 2014, except for the leftovers of the sweaters that I've made, which I'm going to be turning into hats, and the one sweater quantity, the last sweater quantity that I haven't used yet and probably won't use till autumn. So I'm working very diligently toward my goal of only having 10 project lots left over from things stashed before 2014. I want to put out there that having stash is not a bad thing. It's not like I've stopped accumulating stash because you can't see it. It's hidden behind the basket over my shoulder. But I have a small stash of stuff that I've gotten so far this year. And I'm not opposed to getting things. I just don't want things to sit in my stash so long that I fall out of love with them. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you see something and you're like, oh, I need to knit with this right away. And then you don't, and then it sits there, and then you're like, it's okay, but it's not great. I don't want things to be sitting in my stash for forever. Because then I feel guilt that someone else could have possibly gotten the thing that I had and they didn't, and there's just, it's whatever. So apparently I'm a little crazy today, and you're seeing my neuroses. I have 2 projects for the charity thing, but I don't have them here because I already sent them off. On Ravelry, there's a group called the Skylar Blanket Project, and it was started, the woman who founded it, she lost her daughter when she was, I think it was a couple months old, her daughter, Skylar. And a group of her friends on Ravelry and in real life for her, they got together and they made blanket squares and put them together to make her a comfort blanket. And it was so helpful for her that she started this group to make blankets for people who had lost their child. Horrible. I'm trying not to get choked up, but like, that's just awful to me. This charity touches me personally because I have 2 aunts who lost baby girls. One was about 15 days old and the other was about 3 months old. And my mom had a ectopic pregnancy that she got about halfway through the term before they were like, oh, how are you even alive right now? Because this is ectopic and no wonder you're in pain. So I think that they could have used something like this because my mom told me a couple of years ago that she thinks, she feels that it's so hard when you have a miscarriage because when you lose a child who's been born, people are like, oh, that's horrible. Like having given birth to that child somehow makes it more meaningful in some people's eyes. And my grandma had said, well, at least you never had to hold your baby before your baby died. My mom was like, yeah, that's awful. I never even got to hold my baby. Like, can you see how this is awful? So anyway, this charity really touches me because of family experiences. And there was a blanket that came up in the queue. The way it works now, it used to work a different way, but the way it works now is people just make squares and send them in. As they finish a project and have leftover yarn or whatever, just make a few squares, send them in. There are 3 people who collect them. I'm one of them. And then we send them out to sponsors who put the squares together and then send them out to the family. Because I don't always have time to make put a whole blanket together, but I can send it out and I can make a few squares. So I made 2 squares because we were really close to we make them 30 or 36 squares depending on how many people are willing to donate. And we were at 34 with what I had to send and the other two sponsors had to send, and or the other two collectors, and what the sponsor said she would make. So I was like, well, I'll make 2 more. I made the 9-inch lacy blanket square by Amy McElwain in Lion Brand Woolies Denim Twist using US size 6 4.0 millimeter, and the Butterfly Garden Square by Chris Simon using random green acrylic from my stash and a US size G6 4.0 millimeter crochet hook. So those were sent off in the mail on Friday so that this blanket could be put together immediately. I think this is the fastest turnaround we've ever had from getting a blanket in the queue to getting squares out, because it was like a week. It was posted early last week, and I've got my squares out. The other 2 collectors have their squares, and one of the collector's squares have already landed. And so it's just on the sponsor now to finish her squares and put them all together. So I think that is amazing. So if you can, knit a square, knit a hat, knit socks, knit washcloths, whatever you can do it, because it helps. It helps people a lot. My other finished object for the week are my Stitch Surfer socks. This is the pattern by, I'm showing you a front and the back, no wonder it looks funny. Okay, so there you go. This is a pattern by Louise Robert. It's a knitty pattern. I started them for my own knit along and did not finish in time, but that's fine. It's made out of Nooch Fiber Morningside sock in Totally Goth. That's the dark color, and then the red color is Stomping Grapes. So they fit perfectly. I made the second heel a little deeper, but then I tried on the first sock again and it was fine, and the second sock was fine. So I know one of my feet is longer, so I'll just have to keep the longer sock on the longer foot. I'll know when I put them on if I'm putting them on the wrong way. I don't remember which way that is, but they turned out lovely. The pattern is really well written out, so if you've never done Intarsia in the Round, don't be afraid of it, because the pattern explains it very, very well. I hadn't done Intarsia in the Round before, and I made a pair of socks that fits nicely, and the ridge on the bottom of the foot, you totally don't even feel it. I wore them around for about 10 minutes, and then I was like, okay, I'll put them aside so they don't get messed up or dirty or all the things that can happen when you have 2 small children and 6 animals. Last week I didn't have very many works in progress, and this week they kind of exploded. So this is called In the Bag because for some reason I decided I needed to put all of my projects in project bags. Not just for some reason. I know why. Normally I do most of my crafting at my desk. So I just have my projects sitting around on my desk, not in bags or anything. But this past week has been really rainy. And I sit at my desk and watch my kids out the window. So they play outside and I sit inside and listen to a podcast and craft. Well, it's been really rainy, so that hasn't been an option. It is, but it's been cold rain, so they only play outside for a few minutes and then they come in and they're like, oh, we're cold. And I'm like, okay, well, let's change into dry clothes and hang up the wet ones so you can wear them tomorrow after you go play in the rain, because they're not dirty, they're just wet. So I'm not doing that much laundry for them to go out and play outside like 3 times in the rain. I don't have a problem with them playing in the rain. When I was little, my sister and I would dress up in our sundresses to go out and play in warm spring rain. And we never had any spoons in the house because we took spoons and cups and bowls and everything outside to collect the water. I'm not sure why we were collecting water, but it was very important that we collect all of the water that we could while it was raining. And we had a huge water bottle, you know, like the kind that dispense water at offices. We had one of those. and we would fill it up, and that would always be the mission, was to fill up that jug of water. I don't know why. Who knows? Amanda, do you know why? Do you know why we did this? Do you even remember that? We used to do it all the time. So I don't mind that my kids want to play in the rain. I just don't want to wash those clothes all the time when they're just getting wet. They're not dirty. Anyway, so my projects have had to travel around the house, and I'm not monogamous, so all of my projects need to travel around the house as I play with them, and we play games and watch movies and all the things that you do when you're stuck in the house for a week straight with rain. And they've all been traveling in this. This is a bag from 31 that I got for Christmas from Steve's family a couple years ago, his dad's side of the family. So normally my projects would be spread out on my desk. Now they're going to be coming out of this bag. So I'll be showing you to them as I pull them out. The first is something I'm designing. So it's the very start, and that's all you get to see, because I don't know how it's going to turn out, if I'm going to like it. I think I like it so far, but it's still very new and very small. This yarn is from 716 Knit. It's 716 sock, and the name is a little explicit, so I'm not going to say it, but I did flash it so you could read it, and it's linked in the show notes. I picked up my little Turkish spindle, and this, I'm still on the first turtle because it just sat aside for a long time. I think when my nephew tried to spin and he broke up this fiber, it kind of, I needed space from this fiber because I was just like, oh, that's not what I wanted it to do. You know how those things go. But I spun, this is the last little broken piece of fiber that he left me from this spinning project. And then the rest of the 4 ounces is inside this gorgeous bag that Jerry made me. It's got the silky, not sticky fabric on the inside, so the fiber doesn't stick to it. So I've been spinning that a little, just not barely even enough to tell you. I probably won't even talk about it next week because it's so little progress. It's like 1 or 2 lengths a day. These, I have finally decided that it is time for these socks to be finished. I think I've said that before, but really this time it is. These are the Lakeside socks by Julie Viconson. Here they are. They have this lovely, it's not a cable, it just looks like a cable. Lovely detail. There are lace panels. It's a free pattern. It was published in an online magazine, but links in the show notes, as always, and you can find it on Ravelry. So I almost doubled the length of this yesterday. It's where I was the last time you saw it. And now we're here. It's time for these socks to be done. So they were at 5 repeats of this pattern, and now they're at 10, and it's supposed to be to 15 before you start the calf decreases. I'm going to push through. I'm going to be to the calf decreases next week. It's happening. Even if I have to take this again on Sunday and have this be the project that I work on, because that's what I did. I have knitting group on Sunday, and if I only take one project, that is the only project that I can work on, which is what I did with this yesterday, so that it would actually get some progress. This project has been on the needles for, I would say, about a year. I didn't put the start date on Ravelry, and I didn't bother going back in the show notes to find when it was originally mentioned. So maybe I'll look it up for next week, but maybe not. But I think it's been about a year. And in November, I realized that they were just way too big, so I ripped them out. I was probably only 5 repeats in. Ripped them out, recast them on, and then put them in timeout. Until now. Now they need to be finished because the pattern is beautiful. The yarn is nice. It's Premier Serenity sock. You can pick it up at Joann's in the colorway navy. Not navy. Definitely a gray. But it's time. These socks need to be completed. I can't have them just looking at me. So this is just a bag that I got with a project already in it. When my best friend's mom passed away, we found the yarn and the bag in her room, and my best friend gave it to me because she didn't crochet, and it came with a crochet pattern. So I made the crochet pattern for her, and I got to keep the bag. This bag is from Haley. Hale's Knits. She does the Knit Two Together podcast with Lisa. So this is my favorite side because I love paisley so much and I love green. And this orange doesn't bother me because it goes perfectly with that green. Look at how great those fabrics look together. So I love it. And it's got fun embroidery, machine embroidery stitches, fanciness around the top. Anyway, so this is my Haley bag, and inside the Haley bag, the yarn is the Grinning Gargoyle. It's Seda Sock in the Storm colorway. And it's a merino silk 50-50 blend. And what I'm making is Steel City by Josh Ricks. It looks like a big ruffle because you cast on almost 400 stitches and then decrease down. So I am I'm like 15% through by row count, which means I'm actually further than that because of because it decreases in size. This is it's all tangled up. I'm sorry. So this is what it's looking like right now. And it's a paid for pattern on Ravelry. So I'm not going to talk about it too much, but I am going to show you that. And I actually have a design feature. And I'm a little nervous about this design feature because the pattern says that he used almost everything of the skein, about, I think he said 425 yards for bind off and everything. And this is 430 yards. So I'm a little nervous because I accidentally cast on an extra repeat. An extra repeat. So I'm going to decrease it out on the side that I cast it on. But I'm hoping that the stitches that I've had, I'm hoping that it doesn't eat so much yarn and my gauge isn't so off that I can't bind off. We'll see. This is worked on US size 4, which is 3.5 millimeters. Kind of boring part where it's set up for the pattern going on. So now I'm into the pattern going on and I'm pretty excited. Started spinning some BFL. I did not put the card on my bag. This is a bag that is stitched by Jessalou. It's the TARDIS Starry Night bag. So here's the TARDIS. And I want to say that this is tailored fibers, but I can't remember. It will be linked in show notes, and I'll have the tag next week. These are the colors in the BFL. It's so beautiful. Even the orangey color. Let me pull it out and see if I can find you the orangey color. Oh yeah. So even the orangey color is really, really pretty. My plan is to do a 2-ply fingering weight fractal spun. It's the first time that I've done a fractal spin. So I'm pretty excited about that. But I haven't gotten that far on it because I started spinning it and then I lost all my spinning mojo because of cleaning frantically and freaking myself out. I don't know why I do this to myself, but I do. The last, oh no, there are 2 more. So second to last is Test Knit for Josh. It's in this Yarnivore bag that I got from, it's from the Yarnivore podcast with Sadie, but I got it from my friend Becca. She sent me a package at the end of last year, and it had this project bag in it. And I use this project bag probably more than the others because I keep when I'm doing my picture for things that I want to finish for the month, which I opened a thread for in the Ravelry group. When I take pictures of that, that's where I put my design projects or my test knit projects so that people can still see that there's a project but not see what the project is. Anyway, I just finished the toe of the second sock of the test knit. I only had to have one done in the time for completion. So this pattern will be out soon. I'm not sure what the exact date is. I have a stitch just hanging out. I will just flip it on my spare DPN and figure out where it goes later. Anyway, this should be out soon, and next week, because it should be out before then, I'm pretty sure, I will be showing you how awesome this pattern is. But this yarn is 716 knit, 716 sock. It's a self-striping in the Care Bear with Fangs colorway. I really think that everybody's going to want this yarn when they see it in this pattern. You're going to want to knit these socks because they're kind of amazing. Anyway, while we're talking about 716 knit, Jenna, the dyer behind 716 knit, she is starting a yarn truck for New York. Basically what it's going to be is a traveling yarn store. She's contacting indie dyers to see if they would like to supply through her truck so that basically people who can't necessarily get into or get to yarn shops will still be able to come to the yarn truck when it comes around. There's one in, there's a yarn truck in California, I guess. So it's not the craziest idea ever. It works. And she has an Indiegogo campaign, which I will link to in the show notes. And if you can donate to help her get this off the ground, that would be awesome. She has her van, but she needs the flooring and the shelving and stuff. And she needs to place orders for the yarn that she'll be selling, because that doesn't come free. And it's just a really, really cool concept. So if you have the means, go check out her Indiegogo and donate. She has good sponsor gifts if you donate a certain amount. And also she's awesome and her yarn is awesome. So go check it out. The last work in progress I did not work on this week, but I brought it up here because it's in a bag. So this is my log cabin. It's exactly the same as last week. Exactly. Which I didn't show you because it was probably pretty much the same as the week before. But I have the yarn for it in this Kicks and Giggles bag. It's the storybook characters, and it's got a knot. And this now sits next to my television downstairs in the room where it's going to be used, this blanket. And I don't know. I just haven't felt like knitting on it because all the new shiny things I cast on. But all 5 of the skeins of Caron Simply Soft fit inside. The blanket itself does not, but I'm not worried about that. So it's a pretty good size. Could definitely get a good shawl or a child sweater, or I could probably even fit a sweater for myself in there, as long as it didn't have long sleeves. So those are all of my works in progress and all of the bags that I'm using for them. I do have one other bag that you haven't seen in a super long time. It's my Knitting's My Bag, and it's adorable. And I don't think I have a card for Lois, but I will link it probably. I'm going to attempt to link all of the bags that have shops in the show notes. If I don't and you're interested, PM me, but I will try to remember that. So I won this from, I'm pretty sure it was Sittin' in It and had a contest, and I won this bag. This is where I keep my sock yarn blanket specific for the squares yarn. In this bag, this is about half, and then the other half is in this blue bag right here. This one. That has the ZK yarns held in there, but all the other ones are in this Knitting's My Bag bag. And that's where they live. So sock yarn blanket, I did 9 squares this week, which brings me up to 538, which is 69%. These squares right here, these 3, are from Noelle. And then the rest, no, not the rest, almost the rest of the squares are from Jerry. And then this one right here is Nooch Fiber Midtown or Morningside sock in Totally Goth. And that's one of the yarns that I used in my Stitch Surfer, so I'm going to put my other Stitch Surfer yarn right next to it. And then I think I'm going to be using ZK yarn again, because I think that's where I am in the rotation of sock yarns for my blanket. You guys, it's getting huge. I took a picture this morning and I will insert it so you can see how big 69% of a queen size blanket is. The dog in the corner is Molly, and she looks tiny in this picture. I guess maybe she just kind of is small. She's like a 40-pound dog, so she's kind of small. But for scale, also she's on the far side of the photo, so she looks even smaller. It's huge, and I'm so excited that it's growing. I'm so excited. I also worked on Hexapuffs, and those are in my baby formula repurposed bag. Came with some baby formula samples or something. I don't remember. It was a long time ago because I got it when I had Gabriel, and he is 5. But inside, I keep my finished Hexapuffs and my Haley yarn and my other scrappy bits of yarn that I'm going to make into Hexapuffs, and some stuffing. That's not all of my stuffing, that just happens to be the leftovers of what I grabbed out for this week. So here are my Hexapuffs. I did 8 this week, and that brings my total up to 94. First with the Haley yarns. These 3. And these 3 are Haley yarns. This is the Nooch Fiber Morningside in Stomping Grapes. That does not, it does have lighter bits, but they're definitely not that whitish pink color. They're darker than that, so it's not as high contrast as that. It's rainy outside, so I have my lighting on in my room instead of natural lighting, so it's not as perfect. And then my celebratory Hexapuff is, it surfs like my Stitch Surfers in the same yarn. It's a little bit wonky shaped because I think I confused myself of the counts once or twice, but it's not bad, and it will look all hexagon shaped once I put it in my blanket, so I'm not too worried about it. I'm pretty excited about this one, even though it's a little funny shaped. It's exciting that I was able to take the pattern from my sock and make an actual puff that looked like my socks, so that those socks will be immortalized until that puff breaks down. I have some new things this week in the mail. I'll do that one first. So the Gothic Spire socks that I did that were so beautiful, and I'm not just saying that because I made them. I'm saying that because a lot of people said that they were beautiful, and I thought they were beautiful. And the Ashton shawlette that I made those as samples for Leading Men Fiber Arts. So, leading on fiber arts. So, for making them, I got these 2 skeins of the Showstopper base, which is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, 463 yards for 100 grams fingering weight. So I got 2 skeins of London Fog. And my plan is to use them with the skein that I won from the Knits and Things podcast in the same base in the deep sea colorway. So I'm going to use those together to make a sweater cardigan thing. My first fingering weight one. I think this will probably be enough from what I've heard from other podcasters. I think this should be enough to make at least a short sleeve cardigan, lightweight, springy type thing. I don't have a plan for a pattern, but I think that these colors will look very nice together. And I'm pretty excited about it. So thank you, Steve, for the super fast shipping, and I hope that you had an excellent weekend and that people stopped and looked at the samples and bought all of your things because they were like, ooh, that looks really nice knit up. The other thing that I got is a leftover, a remnant, from one of the girls at my knit group. Her name's Claire. I refer to pretty much everybody in my life as girls. I try to keep it to not girls when I'm talking on the podcast because some people find that offensive, but I'm sorry. So one of the women, ladies, whatever you want to say, I'm probably going to slip and say girls again because that's how I do. She made socks out of this, and this is her leftovers, and it is a lot. It's 68 grams left over after she made some socks for her mom. And she said, hey, would you like to use it to make something? And I was like, yes, because I've never used this yarn before. It's Heritage 150 Paints from Cascade Yarns. And it comes in 150 gram hanks, which are 492 yards, and it's a sport weight. So this is about 223 yards. And I think that is enough to make a pair of sport weight socks for myself if I don't make them super, super long. So that's what I'm thinking. I actually looked at the Duckies pattern. I can't remember who that's by now, but I might make this with the Duckies pattern, and I think I have some sport weight that I could use with it. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure yet what is going to happen with this, but I'm excited to use it. And the color is really, really pretty. So I'm excited about that. It's a 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. This week, I read The Selection by Kira Cass, and I read it in 3 days. It was very well written, very interesting. I wanted to keep reading. I don't always feel that way when I'm reading books, but I just couldn't put it down. So I finished that on probably Wednesday, and I didn't have any more library books. So I was like, I could start a book that I have in my personal library, but I don't want to. So I sat around for 2 days, and then I went to the library, and I picked up the second book. And I finished it on Saturday. Yeah. So it's part of a trilogy, I guess, and the third one isn't out yet. But I am on the wait list for the library for when it comes out so I can read it. The basis of the story is it's in the U.S., but not the U.S. There was a huge war, the third, I think there was World War III and World War IV took place, and now they're in what was the U.S., but it might also have parts of Canada and Mexico, or all of Canada and Mexico. They don't have a map, so I can't really, I'm not exactly sure how things fell out. But now there's a caste system in place, and it's level 1 through 8, 1 being the highest royalty, stuff like that. 8 being the lowest, which are the homeless. And the main character is a 5, which is on the lower side. And that is, number 5s are artisans, so performers, singers, musicians, painters, sculptors, those are 5s. You are born into your caste, and a caste, marriage is really important. There's no sex before marriage. It's highly punishable if you're found in a compromising position. It's very difficult to marry out of your caste. There's tons of paperwork you have to put in. You have to do the paperwork, and then you have to wait. It was either 3 or 6 months before you could proceed past doing the initial paperwork, basically to give people time to back out of changing castes, especially people going down a caste to marry someone who they love. The way that the marriage system works for the royals is the girls are married, daughters are married to strengthen alliances, and sons marry girls from the citizenship. And it starts out with 35 girls as part of the selection. So they're basically competing to be married to the prince. And you can marry out of your caste, up or down, or you can buy your way up. You have to fill out paperwork. They send out stuff for you to fill out, and then you have to go in and get your picture taken, and 35 girls are selected from across the country. You all go to the palace, and you try to win the prince's affection. It's not like there are games that you have to play to win. It's basically you go on dates, and it's very awkward because you live in this palace with all these girls, and you spend most of your time with these girls and a very little time with a prince. So the elite, this is the second book, the elite, once the top 10 girls are called the elite. So once it gets cut down to 10, historically, those are your elite. There's, I don't know, it's a big deal to be in the elite. So this talks about being part of the elite. So spoiler, she makes it, obviously. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a trilogy. So not really a spoiler. She's in the elite. It talks about that. A big thing in this is that there are rebel attacks of people who, this system, this caste system, has only been around for 80 years. So there are rebels who are fighting for, people aren't really sure what they're fighting for, but they're fighting against the royals. So like the common people aren't really sure what they're fighting for. So there are attacks on the palace and during the selection. I finished those 2 books this week, and I went to the library. So what I am reading is Delirium by Lauren Oliver. This has also been recommended a couple times. Not that far into it. And this is in the vein of other books that I've been reading. It's young adult. It's dystopian society. So in this, when you reach your 18th birthday, you have brain surgery, and love, like your ability to be in love, is taken away. Because love is considered the most dangerous disease. It makes people do crazy things, and so now their society doesn't have love going on. And she's not 18 yet. So I'm sure she falls in love or something. I don't know. I haven't gotten that far. But I'm sure that's what happens. And I also don't read reviews or the backs of books or anything, so I'm not sure how this book works out. I'm enjoying it so far. I'll probably finish it before next week because it's less than 500 pages. So I'll be reading that. I'll let you know how it goes. I'll let you know what I think about it. As with all of the books, there's always a group who's against what's going on. And in this book, they're people who live in the wild and feel love and whatever, cause problems for the society by trying to protest the surgeries, but obviously not in a way that they could be easily caught and punished. So, let you know what I think. And before I talk about my 3, I meant to actually say this at the very beginning, but I forgot. I am overwhelmed by how people reacted to last week's episode, to my public service announcement. But overwhelmed in the best possible way. I was sure when I put it up that I would get some negative comments, and I haven't yet. Not a single person has said, oh, you shouldn't be talking about that in this type of capacity, or that's inappropriate, or nobody said anything negative at all. It's been a lot of thank you for speaking out sort of thing. And I really, really appreciate it because I was extremely nervous about posting last week's episode because it was so personal. And thank you so much for all of your positive feedback. And I would never ask that people not tell me if they disagree or don't like what I'm saying in my podcast. That can only help. But the fact that nobody said that meant a lot. That said, I do have a list this week, and it is podcasts. The first 2 are kind of related-ish. The first one is Mandobug Crafts with Amanda. She sews and knits and spins and is generally adorable. She also dyes. And she does this with her friend Lindsay. So Amanda is pretty regular about posting, and Lindsay is less regular about posting. And Lindsay has the Knit Whim podcast. So sometimes they talk about similar things, but from different viewpoints, like going on a yarn crawl or dyeing, because they do them together and then they go away and record separately, which is really interesting. I enjoy seeing the same thing from 2 different perspectives. Those are both YouTube podcasts, so links in the show notes, as always. And then the last one that I finished watching is The Fat Squirrel Speaks with Amy Beth. I'm sure you've heard of her if you watch any other podcast. She's hilarious. Basically, she reminds me of what my sister and I are like together, like the insanity that happens when my sister and I are together and we turn our filters off. She's hilarious. Definitely go check her out. I can say that I have laughed at least 95% of the episodes, like laugh out loud at least once during 95% of the episodes. And the other 5%, I just wasn't paying enough attention. Because that happens sometimes when you have small children who are probably about to burst in on you again. It's Gabriel this week. Oh no! So this is the first time that Mara has come in to the podcast, but Gabriel has been in like 6 times. Do you want to say goodbye?
Goodbye.
So this is Mara.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. This is my daughter. She just really, really likes wearing Gabriel's old clothes. And she cut her hair a couple months ago and is still growing out, so it's okay if you're like, she looks like a boy. We get that a lot. It does not bother us. Okay. We hope you made something fantastic with your sticks and string.
Stop.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. You talking you?
Yes, I'm talking to me.
Oh.